Have you ever wondered, of all the prophets in the Bible, who actually saw heaven open, not heard a voice, not felt a presence, actually saw it? The throne, the fire, the living creatures around it, only one man in all of Scripture, one priest, one exile, one witness to what no other human eye has seen. He saw the cherubim, 4 living creatures with 4 faces, covered in eyes, moving like flashes of lightning. He saw the Ophanim, the wheels within wheels, rims full of eyes, turning beneath the throne of God himself. He saw the chariot of heaven moving across the sky, the glory of God leaving the temple and returning again. Isaiah heard, Jeremiah wept, Daniel dreamed. But this man saw the mechanism of heaven with his own eyes. His name was Ezekiel, and this is the story of the only man ever shown how heaven actually moves. In this film, we are going to walk through every heavenly object Ezekiel recorded in his book, one by one. Long before the wheels and the fire, there was a boy in Jerusalem who loved the temple. His name was Ezekiel, son of Buzi, born around 622 BC into a priestly family of noble standing. Ezekiel, the name means God strengthens, a name chosen carefully, a name that would be tested to its limit. He was born into the line of Zadok, the priestly line that stretched back to King David himself. That lineage was not ordinary. The sons of Zadok served in the temple, at the altar, in the holy place. From the time Ezekiel could walk, he knew what his life would be. The priesthood was not a choice. It was inheritance, bone and blood, the calling he had been born into before he could even understand it. At 30 years old, a priest would finally begin his full service before the Lord. 30 was the age. Every boy in his family counted toward that number. Ezekiel grew up counting 2, watching, waiting for his turn. Jerusalem in those years was a city already beginning to crack. You could feel it if you knew where to look. King Josiah sat on the throne, the last great king of Judah. He had torn down the idols, he had reopened the temple. For a little while, the old faith seemed to be coming back to life. Ezekiel was a small boy during those years. He would have remembered the music, the offerings, the sense of coming home. Then in 609 BC, when Ezekiel was around 13, Josiah rode out to Megiddo. He did not return, an Egyptian arrow, a single battle, and the king who had held everything together was dead on his chariot floor. Jerusalem never truly recovered. The kings who followed were weak, corrupt, unable to hold what their father had built. Jehoiakim took the throne, a puppet, first of Egypt, then of Babylon. He burned the prophet Jeremiah's scroll. Ezekiel watched all of this as a young man studying for the priesthood. The city he loved was drifting away. He was not yet a prophet. He was a student, a young priest who still believed the temple would stand forever. Then in 605 BC, Nebuchadnezzar crushed the Egyptian army at Carchemish. The whole world shifted in a single day. Babylon marched south. Jerusalem surrendered. Nebuchadnezzar took gold, temple vessels, and the brightest young men of noble Judah. That was the first deportation. Daniel was among them, a boy of 15, walking 500 miles into exile. Ezekiel stayed behind. He was older, already married, already on the path toward priesthood. He watched his friends leave. For 8 years, Jerusalem lived under Babylonian pressure, paying tribute, watching, hoping the storm would somehow pass by them. It did not pass. In 597 BC, when Jehoiakim rebelled against Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar came back personally with the army. This time he did not negotiate. He took the king, the queen mother, the officials, the craftsmen, all of them, and he took the priests. 10,000 people marched out of Jerusalem toward Babylon. Ezekiel was one of them. He was 25 years old, 5 years from the altar he had trained for his whole life. He would never serve at that altar. He did not know that yet, but something inside him must have felt it. They put him on the road, the same road Daniel had walked 8 years earlier, 500 miles through desert. He walked east with his wife beside him, his neighbors, the elders of his people, all of them displaced, all silent. We do not know what Ezekiel carried, some bread, some clothing, perhaps a single priestly scroll if he was allowed. But the real weight he carried was invisible, a calling with no temple, a priesthood with no altar, no future. Every step took him further from Jerusalem, from the courts where his father had served, from the life he knew. The Babylonians settled the exiles in a region called Tel Abib, beside a great irrigation canal called the Chebar. It was flat country, nothing like the hills of Jerusalem, nothing like home, just canals, farms, foreign sky. The exiles were allowed to build houses, plant gardens, marry, live. Babylon was not cruel in that particular way, but it was exile. Ezekiel knew exactly what that meant. He was living outside the covenant, outside the promise. A priest is useless without a temple. The sacrifices cannot be made anywhere else. The rituals cannot be performed. So Ezekiel lived, he worked, he kept a home, he loved his wife, he waited for a God he could not serve. The years began to pass. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No word from heaven, no vision, no voice. Just the Chebar Canal and the wind and the silence of a priesthood that had been taken before it began. He was approaching 30, the age of priesthood, the age his whole life had been pointed toward. In the wrong country, in Jerusalem, he would have walked into the temple that year, put on the linen garments, begun his service. In Tel Abib, he walked beside a foreign canal, a priest in name only, with nothing left of the life ahead. He did not know, could not have known, that God was not finished with his priesthood. Not even close. God was about to reshape it entirely. The priest who would never serve was about to serve something stranger, a throne that moved, a scroll he would have to eat, a vision that would open the sky above him. It was the 5th day of the 4th month. In the 5th year of his exile, an ordinary morning, he walked to the bank of the Chebar that day. Just another walk, just another priest with nowhere left to go. And then the heavens opened, and nothing in Ezekiel's life or in the history of prophecy would be the same. Tel Abib was not a city. It was a settlement, a collection of mud brick houses along a canal. The Chebar was not a river in the way Ezekiel knew rivers. It was man-made, dug by engineers, straight, efficient, foreign. Babylon had engineered even its rivers to serve the empire's purposes. The canal carried water from the Euphrates across the plain, to the farms, to the date palms, to the exiles. The Jewish captives were given this land to live on, far enough from Babylon to be controlled, close enough to be watched. It was not a prison, that is important to understand. The exiles in Babylon lived relatively normal lives, ordinary lives, lives that could almost pass for peace. They built houses, they planted gardens, they had children, they traded in the local markets quietly. The prophet Jeremiah had written to them from Jerusalem, "Seek the welfare of the city where I sent you. Pray for it, build homes, marry, have sons and daughters, multiply, because you will be there for 70 years, 70 years. That was the word from God. Not 70 days, not 70 years of exile. Ezekiel read that letter, and he knew he would die in this foreign country. He would never see Jerusalem again, for a newly married priest of 25. That sentence was heavier than any chain Babylon had put on him, but he did what Jeremiah said. He lived, he built a small house, he kept his marriage, he waited. The elders of the exile community began to gather around him. He was a priest. He knew the law. They came to his house in the evenings, sat on the floor, asked about the scriptures, asked about home. Ezekiel did what he could. He taught, he prayed. But inside, the wound did not close. A priest without a temple, he watched Babylon with careful priestly eyes. The temples of Marduk, the processions, the foreign gods. He saw the ziggurats rising into the sky, stepped towers built so men could climb toward their gods. He must have thought about that. Babylon built towers up. His God had always come down. That difference sat inside him like a stone. Two different theologies, two different directions, one world. His wife was his anchor during those years. The text never gives us her name. It calls her something else. the desire of his eyes. Think about what that phrase means. Not just a spouse, the thing his eyes wanted. She was his home in a foreign country when everything he knew was taken. She remained. She was Jerusalem to him. We know almost nothing about her, not her voice, not her thoughts, but we know that Ezekiel loved her deeply, enough that God would one day use her death as a sign that is still years away. In these years, she was simply beside him, a priest and his wife, building a life where they could, holding each other upright in the long silence of exile. The months turned into years, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No visions, no voice from God, just the sound of the canal at night, the wind through the reeds, the empty feeling of a priesthood unused. The other exiles asked him sometimes, "Ezekiel, you are a priest. What is God saying to us?" He had no answer, because God was not speaking, not to him, not to anyone they knew. The heavens were closed, and no one could say why, or when they might open again. It is hard to describe what those silent years felt like. For a man trained to mediate between God and people, a priest's whole identity is to stand in the gap, to offer the sacrifice, to carry prayers up. Ezekiel could do none of it, no altar, no sacrifice, and the God he had trained to serve was silent. He was approaching 30, the age of full priestly service, the milestone his whole life had pointed toward. In Jerusalem, his family would have prepared a ceremony. The other priests would have welcomed him at the altar. In Tel Aviv, there was nothing, just another year, another walk along the canal, another morning with no word. The 30th birthday came and went, without ceremony, without altar, without priesthood, a quiet defeat no one else could see. The missed calling of a man God had not yet explained himself to. But something was gathering. Ezekiel could not feel it yet. The heavens had been closed for a reason, not because God was absent, because God was preparing, and preparation takes time in ways we rarely understand. It was the 5th year of exile, the 4th month, the 5th day, an ordinary morning by the canal. Ezekiel walked down to the water, perhaps to pray, perhaps just to walk, the way grieving men sometimes walk. Other exiles were there too, working, talking, going about the day. The sky was clear, the canal quiet, and then Ezekiel looked up toward the north and saw something moving that did not belong in any sky. A great storm, an enormous cloud, fire in the middle of it, flashing, folding in on itself. The other exiles kept working. They did not see it. Whatever was coming for him alone. Ezekiel stood frozen by the canal, a 30-year-old priest who had never served, watching the sky break open. The 5 years of silence were over, the heavens were opening, and the God he had waited for was coming. Ezekiel stood on the bank of the Chebar and watched the storm approach. And from the first moment, he knew something was wrong. Storms in Babylon came from the west, from the Mediterranean, from the Great Sea. Every weather pattern ran that direction, always. This storm was coming from the north, against the wind, against the season, against everything the natural world was supposed to do. North, in Hebrew thought, was the direction of judgment, the direction invading armies came from, the direction the presence of God sometimes appeared, and this was no ordinary cloud. It was vast. It filled the horizon. It rolled toward him with a weight that bent the air around it, inside the cloud. Fire, not lightning. Fire, continuous, enfolding itself, burning without being consumed, flame turning inside flame, around the fire. Brightness, a radiance that spilled outward in every direction, as if the cloud itself could not contain what was inside it and in the heart of the fire. Something gleaming, something the text calls the color of amber, glowing metal, burning bronze. Ezekiel stared. His priestly training told him exactly what he was seeing. He had studied the theophanies. He knew the signs. This was how God appeared, in cloud, in fire, in brightness, the same way he had appeared at Sinai, the same way he had filled the tabernacle. But never, never like this. Never moving, never approaching, never coming to a man standing alone beside a foreign canal. The cloud drew closer. The fire intensified, and then Ezekiel began to see what was inside the cloud, what the fire was actually carrying. 4 living creatures emerging out of the brightness, moving together, moving as one. And his mind could not hold what his eyes were showing him. They had the general form of men, upright, standing with arms and hands. But everything else about them was wrong for any creature on earth. Each one had 4 faces, each one had 4 wings. Their legs were straight, their feet gleamed like polished bronze in the firelight. Under their wings, on all 4 sides, they had human hands, hands that could work, hands that could carry, hands that looked almost familiar. Their wings touched each other. 2 wings spread upward, covering the space between them. 2 wings covered their bodies, a geometry no animal could make, and they were moving, not walking, not flying exactly, gliding somehow, in straight lines, never turning as they moved, always facing forward. Wherever the spirit wanted to go, they went, straight ahead, without rotating, because every direction was already a face for them. Ezekiel could see all 4 faces at once, depending on where he stood, and each face was different. Each face meant something. The face of a man. In front, the face of a lion. On the right, the face of an ox. On the left, the face of an eagle. Behind, man, lion, ox, eagle. 4 faces. 4 creatures, 16 faces in total, turning and not turning, seeing in every direction at once. Between them, fire, burning coals, moving back and forth between the creatures, lightning flashing out from the fire continuously. The creatures themselves moved like lightning. The text gives us the exact word. They ran and returned. Like flashes of light, instant, impossible, alive. Ezekiel was trying to absorb the creatures when he noticed something else, something beside them, something he had not seen at first. Beside each creature, touching the ground, was a wheel, enormous, gleaming, turning, and Ezekiel's mind began to break under the weight of what was happening. But before we enter the wheels, the Ophanim, we have to stay with the creatures a little longer, because Ezekiel stayed with them too. He did not look away. He could not. The priest in him was reading the vision even as the man in him was trembling. He was seeing the throne room of God, but the throne room was moving. The throne room had wings. The throne room had faces. The throne room was alive. Nothing in his training had prepared him for this. No scroll described it. No rabbi had spoken of it. The sky above him was showing him something new. The wind from the north howled across the canal. The fire burned. The creatures moved. And Ezekiel, the priest with no temple, stood and watched. He was about to learn why he had been taken from Jerusalem, why he had waited 5 silent years, why God had brought him to this canal, because he was about to become the only man in Scripture who would see this vision and live, and be sent to tell the world what he saw. The storm was here, the creatures were here, and heaven, actual heaven, was opening above a foreign canal in Babylon. Ezekiel's hands began to shake. His knees would not hold him much longer, and the vision was only just beginning. Ezekiel stood frozen on the bank of the Chebar, 4 living creatures moving in the fire above him, and his priestly mind was racing because he had read about creatures like these. He had studied them. His whole life he had trained in the knowledge of what they were. They were cherubim, the guardians of the throne of God. The creatures carved above the Ark of the Covenant in the Holy of Holies. Every priest knew the cherubim. Their images were woven into the temple curtains. Their shapes were hammered into the mercy seat of pure gold. 2 golden cherubim stood on the ark itself, wings stretched out, facing each other, shielding the presence of God between them. Ezekiel had never been allowed into the Holy of Holies. No priest was, only the high priest, once a year, on the Day of Atonement. But he had studied the descriptions, he had memorized the designs, he had imagined those golden figures his entire priestly life. Now he was seeing them, not carved, not hammered, not woven, alive, moving, breathing, burning with fire that was somehow inside them. The cherubim of the temple were the shadow. These creatures above the canal were the reality, and the reality was overwhelming. The first thing Ezekiel noticed was that they did not look exactly like the golden figures on the ark. These had 4 faces each. The cherubim over the ark had 1 face. These had 4. That meant something. In Hebrew symbolism, nothing was accidental. Everything was meaning. 4 faces because these creatures did not face in one direction. They faced in every direction. They saw everything at once. The face of a man, reason, conscience, the image of God himself, the highest of created beings on earth. The face of a lion, king of the wild animals, strength, royalty, the untamed power of the living world. The face of an ox, king of the domestic animals, service, labor, the faithful strength that builds and carries and endures. The face of an eagle, king of the birds of the air, vision, speed, the soaring reach of the heavens themselves. Together, these 4 faces represented all of creation, every category, every realm, the whole created order gathered into 4 living witnesses, and they stood beneath the throne of God, because all creation stands beneath God, every creature, every category, every realm. The cherubim were not decoration, they were theology, living theology, every wing beat declaring the sovereignty of the one they carried. Ezekiel understood this. He understood it the way only a priest could, and his knees gave way a little bit under the weight of understanding. The creatures had 4 wings each, 2 wings spread upward, 2 wings covering their bodies, a geometry of worship and movement together. The 2 wings spread upward touched the wings of the creature beside them. 4 creatures, 8 raised wings, meeting in the center above them, and the 2 wings covering their bodies were an act of modesty, of reverence. Even the cherubim covered themselves in the presence of the throne. This is a detail worth pausing on. The creatures closest to God, burning with his fire, carrying his throne, still covered themselves before him. If the cherubim do not stand unveiled before God, how much more should the rest of creation understand what his presence actually means? Under their wings, on all 4 sides, were human hands, hands that could work, hands that could hold, hands that could carry fire if they had to. The text is specific. These were the hands of a man, not paws, not talons, hands, human hands, hands that could do the work of heaven. Their legs were straight, not jointed like most creatures. They could move in any direction instantly, without turning, without adjusting, without delay. Their feet gleamed like burnished bronze, metal made liquid by heat, strong, beautiful, burning without being consumed, perfect for standing in fire. And between them, in the space between the 4 creatures, there was fire, living fire, burning coals moving back and forth. The fire was not around them, the fire was among them. They stood inside the fire, the way other creatures stand inside the air. Lightning flashed out from that fire continuously, going forth and returning, illuminating everything around it with sudden bursts of blinding white, and the creatures themselves, when they moved like the lightning. That was how Ezekiel described it, like flashes, like light itself. They did not run, they did not fly. They appeared where the Spirit wanted them to appear, faster than the eye could track them, because wherever the Spirit was, there they went, without hesitation, without argument, without needing to know the destination in advance. This is what it means to be a creature of the throne. Complete surrender to the will of the one who sits on it. No delay, no friction. Ezekiel watched this perfect obedience, and he must have thought about his own people, his own city, his own life of half-obedience. Jerusalem had been called to this kind of surrender and had refused. The priests had known this kind of calling and had grown complacent. And here, above a foreign canal, 4 creatures were showing him what true service actually looked like. And it was terrifying and beautiful. The cherubim burned with a fire that was not destroying them. They moved with a precision no human army could ever achieve. They were the living architecture of worship, every face declaring something, every wing positioned for a purpose, every movement an act of submission. And Ezekiel, the priest with no temple, was being shown the real worship, the worship that had been happening above his head his entire life. The temple in Jerusalem had been a copy, a shadow, a small wooden model of what was happening in the actual heavens above it. The real cherubim had always been there, guarding the real throne, worshipping the real God. The temple had just been a window into the truth. And now, for reasons only God understood, Ezekiel was being shown the window from the other side, from inside, from heaven itself. The creatures moved. The fire burned, the lightning flashed, and somewhere inside all of it, the Spirit moved, and they moved with it. Ezekiel had seen the cherubim, but he had not yet understood what was beneath them. The wheels had been there the whole time, and the wheels, the Ophanim, were a different kind of mystery altogether, a mystery that has puzzled readers for 3,000 years, because the wheels were not ordinary wheels, and Ezekiel, the priest who now understood the cherubim, was about to be shown something stranger still. Ezekiel had been staring at the cherubim, at their faces, at their wings, at the fire between them. Then he looked down. Beside each creature, touching the ground, was a wheel. Enormous, gleaming, impossible. The Hebrew word for these wheels is Ophanim, one of the strangest objects in all of Scripture. Ezekiel describes them carefully. He uses the most precise language he can find, because no one would believe him. First, they gleamed like beryl, a pale green-blue stone, polished, catching the firelight, throwing it back everywhere. Second, all 4 wheels were identical, same construction, same size, same design, a perfect matched set beneath the creatures. Third, and this is where language begins to break, each wheel was a wheel within a wheel. Imagine a wheel laid flat on the ground. Now imagine another wheel standing upright through it at 90 degrees. That is what Ezekiel saw. 2 wheels in the same space, crossing through each other, rotating without colliding. The geometry is impossible. 2 solid wheels cannot share the same space, but these did. These were not ordinary wheels. The design had one purpose. The Ophanim could roll in any direction instantly, without turning, without pivoting, without delay, forward, backward, left, right, any direction the Spirit chose. The wheels responded as fast as the creatures above them. And then, the detail that has unsettled readers for 3,000 years, the rims of the wheels, full of eyes all around the rims, not a few, not a handful. The text says, covered with eyes, filled with eyes. Ezekiel had never seen anything like it. No creature he knew, no object, no idol, no carving, nothing but the symbolism, for a priest trained in Scripture, was unmistakable. The eyes meant one thing, omniscience. God sees everything. He misses nothing. No corner of creation is hidden from him. The eyes declared this visually, wherever the wheels rolled. The eyes went with them, wherever the throne went. The seeing of God went too. There is no place you can go to escape the vision of the one who sits on this throne. Ezekiel absorbed this slowly, his priestly mind working through the symbolism, his human heart trying not to collapse. Then he noticed something else, something that made the Ophanim even stranger. The wheels were connected to the creatures, not physically, not by any visible link. Something deeper than that. When the cherubim moved, the wheels moved too. When the creatures lifted from the ground, the wheels lifted with them into the air, always at their level. When the creatures stopped, the wheels stopped. When they went forward, the wheels went forward. No command, no signal. The text explains why, with a phrase that has puzzled theologians for centuries. The spirit of the creatures was in the wheels. The spirit of the creatures was in the wheels, not a separate spirit, the same spirit animating both at once. The cherubim and the Ophanim were not 2 separate things. They were one unified system, one breath, one will. If the cherubim were the worshippers of the throne, the Ophanim were the motion of the throne itself. Together they formed something no human language has ever captured. A chariot that was also a temple, a moving altar. Ezekiel did not have a word for it. later Jewish tradition would call it. The Merkava, the chariot throne of God, but that word came centuries after him. In the moment, Ezekiel simply saw it and searched for words that could hold it. The wheels gleamed, the eyes watched, the spirit moved, and the whole impossible structure rose into the air above the canal. This was the first time Ezekiel saw the full system moving together. Creatures, fire, wheels, eyes, all rising as one. The sound was overwhelming. The wings sounded like the roar of mighty waters, like the voice of the Almighty himself, like the tumult of an army on the march. Three of the loudest things a human can ever hear. Rushing water, the voice of God, an army moving into battle, all at once, pouring down on one priest. Ezekiel could not have stood much longer. The sensory weight alone would have killed a lesser man. The terror, the light, but he was being held up. Something was steadying him. The same spirit moving the wheels was holding him upright, because God had not brought him here to destroy him. God had brought him here to send him. Sending requires survival. The Ophanim turned, the eyes watched, the cherubim burned, and above all of it, above the wheels, above the creatures, something else was coming into view, a shape, a structure, a presence. The vision had been building to something. Above the heads of the cherubim, stretched out over them, was a great expanse, shining, crystal, like the sky itself. Above the expanse, Ezekiel would see the throne, and upon the throne, the figure that would change him forever. But that is the next chapter. For now, the wheels turned, the eyes watched. The priest could not look away. Ezekiel had been looking at the creatures, at the wheels, at the fire between them. Then he looked up. Above the heads of the cherubim, stretched out over all four of them, was an expanse. Vast, flat, shining. The Hebrew word is rakia, the same word used in Genesis for the firmament God stretched across the sky at creation. But this rakia was not the ordinary sky. It was crystal, ice, a frozen sea of light suspended above living fire. Imagine a floor made of sky, a ceiling made of frozen light, hanging over four burning creatures and their impossible wheels. The contrast was deliberate. Below, fire, movement, lightning, wheels, burning bronze. Above, stillness, silence, cold, perfect light. The expanse did not move, it did not burn, it simply was. And its stillness above the chaos below declared something important. Above all the motion of creation, God is still. Above all the fire of judgment, God is at rest, unmoved, unshaken. Ezekiel stared at the crystal expanse and felt the theology of it before he could find the words. Heaven has a floor, and that floor is not warm. It is not welcoming in the way humans imagine heaven to be. It is overwhelming. It is other. The wings of the cherubim stretched upward toward it, 2 wings from each creature, reaching toward the crystal above them, and the sound of those wings. Ezekiel had heard it already, like the roar of mighty waters, like the voice of the Almighty. But when the creatures stood still, when they lowered their wings, the sound stopped, and the silence was louder than the noise, a silence above the crystal expanse, a silence so complete it had weight. The silence of a space where something was about to happen. Then Ezekiel heard it, above the expanse, above the crystal floor, a voice. And the voice was not explaining itself, it was commanding. It was the voice of the one who sat above the expanse. And what it sat on was a throne, a throne. Ezekiel saw it above the crystal floor. Blue, deep blue, the color of a stone called sapphire, blazing blue. Sapphire, in the ancient world, was not just beautiful, it was the stone of heaven itself, the color of the sky at its deepest. Moses had seen a pavement of sapphire beneath God's feet at Sinai. Now Ezekiel was seeing the throne that stood above it. The throne was not small, it was not delicate. It filled the space above the crystal expanse the way a mountain fills a valley. And on the throne, a figure. And here Ezekiel's language almost breaks down entirely under the weight of what he was seeing. He does not say, "I saw God." He is too careful for that, too trained, too aware of what it means to say such a thing. He says, The appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. 4 layers of protective language around a single terrifying truth. The appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord, not God directly. The outermost edge of what God allows to be seen. And what did that outermost edge look like? Like a man, upright, seated, a human form above all the fire and thunder. From the waist upward, the color of amber, glowing metal, the same gleaming bronze gold Ezekiel had seen in the heart of the storm. From the waist downward, fire, pure fire. The kind of fire that does not need fuel, the kind that simply is because God is. The figure radiated light in every direction, a brightness that surrounded it completely, that poured out from it like heat from the sun, and around that brightness, a rainbow arching over the figure, over the throne, over the crystal expanse, over everything, a rainbow, not a storm, not lightning, a rainbow. The sign God had placed in the sky after Noah. The sign of his covenant, after all the terror, the fire, the creatures, the wheels, the crystal, the throne. God put a rainbow around himself, as if to say, I am the one who promised. I am the one who kept the promise. I am the same God who made the covenant. Ezekiel saw this and fell. The text does not say he stumbled. It does not say he knelt. It says he fell on his face. This is what the presence of God actually does. It does not inspire. It does not uplift. First, it puts you on the ground. Isaiah fell when he saw the throne. Daniel fell. John fell in Revelation. Every human who glimpsed this throne went down immediately. Because standing before the actual glory of God is not a spiritual feeling. It is a physical impossibility for fallen human flesh. Ezekiel lay on the bank of the Chebar Canal, face in the dirt, the vision burning above him, unable to move. He had seen the crystal expanse, the sapphire throne, the figure of fire and amber, the rainbow of covenant around it all. He had seen more of heaven than any man before him, more than Abraham, more than Moses at the burning bush. And he was face down in foreign soil, unable to rise, a priest with no temple who had just been shown the real one. Then a voice spoke to him, from above the expanse, from the throne, not a vision anymore, not a symbol, a voice speaking directly to him, and what the voice said would change everything that was left of his life. It said, Son of man, stand on your feet, and I will speak with you, and the Spirit entered him and set him upright. The priest who had been falling for 5 years was standing again for the first time since Jerusalem, upright, called, sent. The vision was not the end. The vision was the beginning. The throne above the canal was not a spectacle. It was a commissioning, a preparation, a 5-year silence broken by the most overwhelming job interview in human history. Ezekiel stood on his feet, covered in canal mud, trembling, alive, and God began to speak. The crystal expanse, the sapphire throne, the amber fire, the covenant rainbow, all of it for this moment. To tell one displaced priest, you are not forgotten, you are not finished. I know exactly where you are, and I sent the storm. God spoke from above the crystal expanse, and the first thing he said was, Son of man, listen. And then, I am sending you, not to a foreign nation, not to a distant king, to Israel, to his own people, the ones beside this canal. That was the harder assignment. Strangers might hear you. Your own people, the ones who know better, rarely do, God said. They are rebellious, stubborn, hard foreheads, resistant hearts, a people who have heard everything and changed nothing, whether they listen or refuse. You will speak, whether they hear or walk away. You will not stop speaking. Then God said, Open your mouth, eat what I give you. And Ezekiel looked up at the outstretched hand. In that hand, a scroll, already unrolled, already written, both sides covered in words. Front and back, scrolls were written on one side only. This one was not. Whatever was on it was too much for one surface. The words written on it were lamentations, mourning, and woe. 3 words carrying the full weight of a nation's end. Not promises, not restoration, not comfort. Not yet. The first thing God handed his prophet was a scroll of grief. Because Ezekiel was not being sent to preach revival, he was being sent to witness a collapse already well underway. God said, "Eat this scroll, then go and speak to the house of Israel." And Ezekiel opened his mouth, and the scroll, filled with lamentations and mourning and woe, tasted like honey, sweet as honey in his mouth. This detail stops every reader. A scroll of grief, a message of destruction, sweet on the tongue of the prophet, because the word of God is always sweet. Even when the word is hard, even when the message costs everything, truth is sweet to the one who has been starved of it. 5 years of silence, and finally, a word, any word from God, even judgment, even grief, was sweeter than the long silence of a heaven that would not open. He swallowed the scroll, and the words became part of him, not a message he carried, a message he had become. God was not handing Ezekiel a speech. He was remaking Ezekiel into the speech itself. That is what eating the scroll means. Then God said, "Go to the exiles at Tel Abib. Find them, sit among them." And Ezekiel went. He found his people beside the canal. He sat down among them, and for 7 full days he said nothing. 7 days of silence after the most overwhelming vision in prophetic history. 7 days sitting with grieving, displaced people. He was not withholding, he was absorbing. The scroll was still working inside him, the words still becoming flesh and bone. At the end of 7 days, God spoke again, and this time he gave Ezekiel a title, a weight, a role. He said, "I have made you a watchman for the house of Israel, a watchman. Think carefully about what that means." A watchman stood on the city wall. He scanned the horizon. He sounded the alarm the moment danger appeared. If he saw the sword coming and said nothing, the blood of the people was on his hands alone. But if he warned them and they refused to move, they died in their own choices. The watchman was clean, God was saying. Your job is not to save them. Your job is to warn them. That is the whole assignment. Whether they repent, whether they listen, whether Jerusalem falls anyway, none of it changes the watchman's single duty. Sound the alarm, speak the word, and leave the outcome to the God who sent the storm in the first place. Ezekiel walked back to Tel Abib carrying something no priest had ever carried, a scroll dissolved into his own flesh. Not a calling to the altar, not a calling to the sacrifice, a calling to stand on the wall and watch the horizon. The priest had become a prophet, the temple's servant had become a sentinel, the exile had become God's own alarm bell. He walked back through the same streets, the same mud brick houses, the same canal, the same foreign sky above it all, but the man walking back was not the same man who had walked out to the canal that morning, not even close. The scroll was inside him now. The vision was burned behind his eyes, and somewhere on the horizon, the sword was already moving. God did not give Ezekiel words next. He gave him objects, a brick, a pan, some rope, a razor, because the exiles would not listen to speeches. They had heard speeches. They had heard Jeremiah for 20 years. So God turned Ezekiel's body into the message, his house into a theater, his life into a living prophecy. The first sign act: take a clay brick, set it before you, and scratch into it the outline of a city. Draw walls around it. Build siege ramps against it. Set up enemy camps. Place battering rams at the gates. The city on the brick was Jerusalem. The siege on the brick was Babylon, and it was coming, already decided. Then God said, "Take an iron pan. Set it up as a wall between you and the brick, and fix your face toward it." The iron pan was the barrier between God and his city. The sin of Jerusalem had become a wall of iron. God was not turning away from Jerusalem out of indifference. He was being blocked. By the city's own choices, Ezekiel set up the brick, set up the pan, fixed his face toward it, and held that position day after day. Then came the second sign. God said, "Lie down on your left side and bear the iniquity of Israel upon it. 1 day for each year of Israel's punishment, 390 days on his left side, without moving. Then roll to your right side." and bear the iniquity of Judah 40 more days, 40 more years of consequence. 390 plus 40, 430 days total, lying on the ground outside his house. The neighbors walked past, the elders came to watch, a priest lying in the dirt. For over a year, God told him exactly what to eat during those days. Rationed bread, measured water, the diet of a city under siege. The portions were calculated to show what Jerusalem would eat when Babylon surrounded her and cut off every supply line. Ezekiel asked one question during all of this. Just one, he said. Lord, must I cook the bread over human dung? God said yes, because that is what a besieged city burns when the wood runs out and the fires grow cold. Ezekiel pushed back. He was a priest. His whole life he had kept himself ceremonially clean. This would defile him. God relented slightly. Use cow dung instead, but the point stood. Siege meant defilement. Siege meant the end of clean things. Ezekiel cooked his bread, measured his water, lay on his side in the dirt outside his house. Day after day, his neighbors watched a priest become a spectacle. They did not understand yet. They would understand later, much later. Then came the third sign act, the one that would have shocked every person watching more than the brick or the lying down. God said, "Take a sharp sword, use it as a razor, shave your head, shave your beard, weigh the hair carefully." For a priest, this was almost unthinkable. Priests were forbidden from shaving their heads as a sign of mourning. But God was not asking Ezekiel to mourn. He was asking him to become the map of Jerusalem's destruction. Burn 1/3 of the hair inside the city outline on the brick. Pestilence and famine. Consuming the city from within. Strike 1/3 with the sword around the city. The ones who try to flee. Cut down outside the walls. Scatter 1/3 to the wind. The survivors. Dispersed across the earth. Carried away to every corner of the nations, and take a few strands, bind them in the hem of your garment. A remnant, small, barely saved, but saved, even in the scattering. A few strands kept, even in the burning. Something preserved. The remnant was always part of the sign. Ezekiel stood there, bald, bearded no more, holding a fistful of his own hair over a clay brick city, and the exiles who had been watching this strange priest for over a year began to feel something cold move through them, because the sign acts were not theater anymore. They were prophecy made visible, and the hair in his hand was theirs. The sign acts were finished. The brick, the days on the ground, the shaved hair scattered to the wind. Then something different happened. Not a sign act performed in Tel Aviv. A journey, a vision, a transport. Ezekiel was sitting in his house. The elders of Judah were seated before him, and the hand of God fell on him. He looked up and saw a figure. The same figure from the throne vision, fire from the waist down, amber above. The figure stretched out what looked like a hand, took Ezekiel by a lock of his hair, and lifted him into the air between earth and heaven, suspended, carried by the Spirit northward, toward Jerusalem, 500 miles in a single breath. He arrived above the north gate of the temple, set down in vision, standing in the city he had left 6 years before. Jerusalem, still standing, still inhabited, the temple still there, the smoke of offerings still rising into the morning air. But God had not brought him here to be comforted. He had brought him here to see what was actually happening inside. God said, "Son of man, do you see this? I'm going to show you the abominations they are committing here, the things that are driving my presence out of this temple, the things your people say I cannot see. I see everything. First, at the north gate, a statue, an idol set up at the very entrance to the house of God. Ezekiel recognized it, the image of jealousy, a foreign god standing where only the glory of the Lord should stand. Then God showed him a wall, a hidden door in the wall. He said, 'Dig through it,' and Ezekiel dug, behind the wall. A room, and on the walls of the room, images, carved, painted, every kind of creeping thing, reptiles, beasts, the gods of Egypt, the gods of Babylon, covering every surface of a secret room inside the temple. And before those images, 70 elders of Israel, each one holding a censer, burning incense to painted walls in the dark. 70 elders, the number of the full council of Israel. The leaders, the ones responsible for the spiritual life of the nation. One of them was a man named Jazaniah, named specifically. A name Ezekiel would have recognized, a leader gone completely wrong. They said, "The Lord does not see us. The Lord has forsaken the land, so we do what we want in the dark." That sentence is the heart of every idolatry, not atheism, not open rebellion, just God isn't watching, so it doesn't matter. But God was watching. God had always been watching, and now he was showing his prophet exactly what he had been seeing. Then God said, "You will see even greater abominations than these. Come, look again at the north gate of the temple. Women sitting, weeping for Tammuz, a Babylonian god of vegetation and death." The women of Jerusalem were weeping for a Babylonian deity inside the courts of the house of the living God. They had carried exile culture into the temple before the exile had even fully arrived. The contamination ran deep. Then, greatest of all, between the porch and the altar, the most sacred space in the entire temple complex. 25 men, backs to the temple, faces to the east, bowing down to the rising sun, worshipping the light with their backs to God in the holiest place on earth, bowing toward a star in full view of the altar. God said, "Is it a small thing that they do these abominations here? They have filled the land with violence. They have provoked me to anger. And look, they put the branch to their nose. They do not even try to hide it." Ezekiel stood in the vision and could not speak. 6 years of exile, and Jerusalem had not repented, had gone further. The temple was still standing. The smoke was still rising. But the inside had already become something else entirely, a shell of worship with the presence already preparing to leave. The glory was already beginning to lift, already beginning to go. God had not abandoned Jerusalem because he wanted to. He had been driven out, step by step, idol by idol, room by room. Ezekiel had come to Jerusalem in a vision, expecting to see the city he loved. He saw the city that had left God first, and now he understood what the synax meant. The brick, the siege ramps, the hair burning in the fire. Jerusalem was not being punished by a God who stopped caring. Jerusalem was being emptied by a God who had been pushed out. The vision was not finished. There were more abominations to see and more consequences already moving into place. The man in linen was coming. The 6 destroyers were at the gate, and the coals of judgment were almost ready. Still in the vision, still inside Jerusalem, and now Ezekiel heard God cry out. With a loud voice, he cried to the city, and 7 figures appeared, coming from the direction of the upper gate that faces north. 6 of them carried weapons, shattering weapons. The text calls them tools made specifically for destruction, but the 7th was different, dressed in linen, the clothing of a priest, of someone who handles holy things. At his side, not a weapon, a writing case, an inkhorn, the tools of a scribe, not a soldier, the 6 destroyers and the 1 writer, judgment and mercy arriving together, the same gate, the same moment. They came and stood beside the bronze altar, the place of sacrifice, the center of the whole temple system, and the glory of the God of Israel. The presence that had filled this place for centuries began to move. It rose from the cherubim where it had rested and moved to the threshold of the temple, pausing, hovering, waiting. Then God spoke to the man in linen, the one with the inkhorn. He said, "Go through the city, through Jerusalem, find everyone who sighs and groans over the abominations being committed here, and mark their foreheads, a mark, a single mark on the forehead, to identify those who still grieved over what Jerusalem had become, not the righteous by performance, not the ones with the best temple attendance, the ones who were broken by the sin, the ones who saw the women weeping for Tammuz and felt sick, the ones who knew about the secret room and wept. Grief over sin was the mark of salvation, not power, not position, not priestly lineage, just grief, honest grief. Then God spoke to the 6 with weapons, "Follow the man in linen through the city. Do not spare, do not pity. Kill old men, young women, children, But do not touch anyone who has the mark on their forehead. Begin at my sanctuary. Start with the elders who stand before the temple, the ones who should have known better. Ezekiel fell on his face. He cried out, Lord God, will you destroy all the remnant of Israel? He was interceding. The priest in him could not stop. Even in the vision, even watching destruction, he pleaded. God answered him directly. The iniquity of the house of Israel is exceedingly great. The land is full of blood, they say. The Lord has forsaken the land. The Lord does not see. So I will not spare, I will not pity, but their deeds I will repay upon their heads. And then the man in linen returned. He came back to God and said, I have done as you commanded. The mark had been given. The grief had been honored. The inkhorn was the instrument of salvation, a writing case at the side of a linen-robed figure walking through a doomed city, marking the ones who still felt what God felt, the ones whose hearts had not yet gone completely numb to the sin. Two objects, one city, the inkhorn that saved, and the weapons that judged, walking the same streets at the same time. Mercy and judgment are never separate in the economy of God. They move together, they arrive together, always. Ezekiel watched the 6 destroyers move through Jerusalem, and he understood. The temple was no longer protecting the city. The temple had been defiled from within. The protection had lifted with the glory. The walls meant nothing without the presence, and the presence, the glory of the God of Israel, was still moving, still lifting, still preparing to leave completely. The coals were next, scattered from between the cherubim over the city, fire from the throne, falling on the streets below. The destruction was not coming from Babylon alone. Something deeper was being removed, something that could never be rebuilt by human hands. The glory was departing, and Ezekiel, still in the vision, still watching, could not look away from what was being lost. The man in linen was still standing there, beside the cherubim, beside the wheels, beside the fire, and God spoke to him again, this time not with an inkhorn, this time with something else entirely. He said, Go in among the wheels, beneath the cherubim, and fill your hands with burning coals. Take the coals from between the cherubim and scatter them over the city, over Jerusalem, over the streets below. The man in linen went in, between the creatures, into the fire that burned there without consuming anything around it. One of the cherubim reached out a hand from between the creatures and placed burning coals into the linen hands. This detail is worth pausing on. The coals of judgment came from the same fire that surrounded the throne of God, the same fire Ezekiel had seen on the day the heavens opened, the same fire between the living creatures by the canal. Judgment was not coming from somewhere outside God, it was coming from the center of his own presence, from his own fire. This is what makes the judgment of God different from human anger. It does not come from wounded pride or lost control. It comes from the same place as his glory. His holiness and his judgment are not opposites. They are the same fire. The man in linen took the coals, walked out from between the creatures, and scattered them over Jerusalem below. Fire from heaven, not Babylonian fire, not the fire of an invading army, the fire of the throne itself falling on the city. Ezekiel watched this and understood something he could not have understood. Before the canal vision changed everything, Babylon was the instrument, but God was the cause. The fire was his, the judgment was his, the decision was his alone. Then Ezekiel looked again at the cherubim, and something had changed. Something had shifted in the structure of the vision. The cherubim were moving, the wheels were turning, the whole throne chariot was beginning to rise from its position, and the glory, the amber fire, the rainbow, the sapphire throne, was moving with them, lifting, departing, leaving the temple. It moved from above the ark in the Holy of Holies to the threshold of the temple. It paused there, hovering, as if reluctant, as if giving the city one more moment, one more chance to call it back before it crossed the threshold. Jerusalem did not call it back. The city did not notice. The priests kept performing their rituals in an emptying building. The glory moved again. From the threshold to the east gate of the temple court, still pausing, still waiting, then from the east gate. It rose above the city, above the walls, above the Mount of Olives to the east, and there it stopped, hovering over the mountain, looking back at the city it had inhabited since Solomon built the temple. Ezekiel watched the glory of the Lord leave Jerusalem, and no words in any language have ever fully described that moment. The temple was still standing. The stones were still there. The altar was still in place, curtains still hanging, but the presence was gone. The building was now just a building, beautiful, empty, a shell waiting for Babylon's fire. This is what Ezekiel had been sent to see. Not just the abominations, not just the judgment, the departure of the glory. Because when the glory left, everything Jerusalem trusted in left with it. The walls could not hold without the presence. No army, no alliance, no political maneuvering would save a city the glory of God had already walked away from. Ezekiel stood in the vision and felt the grief of it, the same grief that had filled the scroll he had eaten. Lamentations, mourning, and woe. He understood now what those three words meant. He had just watched them happen in real time. The cherubim rose, the wheels turned beneath them, the expanse stretched above. The throne moved east and did not look back, and the vision began to close. The Spirit lifted Ezekiel, carried him back to Babylon, back to the canal, back to Tel Aviv. He came back to the exiles, and he sat, and the hand of God was heavy upon him, and he could not speak yet, because what he had seen was too large for immediate words. The glory had left Jerusalem, and nobody in the city knew it yet. They were still sacrificing, still burning incense, still performing the rituals in a temple the presence had already abandoned. The real destruction had already happened. Babylon's siege would only finish what the departure of the glory had already begun. The coals were scattered, the mark had been given, the man in linen had done his work, the 6 destroyers had done theirs, and the cherubim, the living creatures Ezekiel had first seen above the canal, were carrying the throne of God away from his people. Time passed after the vision. Ezekiel spoke. He warned. He performed the sign acts, and the exiles mostly ignored him. They called him an entertainer, a riddle maker, someone who told interesting stories that would never actually come true. They sat in their houses and said, "The vision he sees is for many years from now. It will not happen in our time." So Ezekiel kept watching the horizon, kept sounding the alarm into the indifference, into the settled comfort of exile life. He had his wife, the desire of his eyes. She was still there. His anchor, his home inside the foreign country. Then one evening God spoke to him, and the word that came was not for the exiles. It was for Ezekiel himself. God said, "Son of man, I am about to take away the desire of your eyes with a single stroke. Suddenly, do not mourn, do not weep, do not let your tears fall. Groan silently, but do not perform the rituals of grief." Ezekiel heard this. A priest trained in every mourning rite his tradition had, told not to use a single one of them. That evening, his wife died, the desire of his eyes. Sudden, gone, the anchor of his exile. Years, gone, and Ezekiel did what God told him to do. He got up the next morning. He went out to the people. He spoke. The exiles stared at him. They knew his wife had died. They saw his face. They said, "Why are you not mourning?" And Ezekiel said, "The word of the Lord came to me. I am a sign to you. What I am doing, you will do when Jerusalem falls, when the temple is destroyed. You will not be able to mourn it properly either. The grief will be too large, the loss too total. You will groan quietly to each other, but the tears will not come the way they should, because some losses are beyond the rituals. Some grief is too deep for the forms that normally hold it. The temple was the desire of Israel's eyes, their strength, their glory, the thing their souls turned toward from anywhere on earth, and it was going to be taken, suddenly, with a stroke, the way his wife had been taken. Without ceremony, without warning, Ezekiel's personal grief was not separate from his prophecy. It was his prophecy. His loss was the nation's loss, made personal. God did not spare his prophet the pain of the sign. He did not explain it kindly first. He just took her and waited to see if Ezekiel would trust the word even when the word cost him everything he had left in the world. He did. He got up. He went out. He spoke. the watchman stood on the wall even on the morning his home had gone silent. This is the chapter the commentaries move through quickly. The shortest chapter, the most personal, the hardest to read. A man lost his wife so that a nation might understand what they were about to lose. And he did not break. The desire of his eyes was gone. And Ezekiel, the priest with no temple, the prophet with no audience, kept going. After the death of his wife, God gave Ezekiel one more instruction. Wait, watch, and when the news comes, speak. His mouth had been restricted at certain points in his ministry, bound by God's own command to silence at specific times. But God said, on the day a survivor arrives from Jerusalem with the news, on that day your mouth will be opened, you will speak and be silent no more. The long watchman's vigil will be over. The alarm will finally be understood. So Ezekiel waited. The exiles settled back into their routines. The months passed. The indifference returned like a tide. In Jerusalem, Zedekiah had finally rebelled against Babylon, the thing every prophet had warned against for decades. Nebuchadnezzar came back with the full army, this time with a different look in his eyes. This time, to finish it, he surrounded the city in January of 588 BC, and the siege began. The brick Ezekiel had scratched became real stone and real fire. Inside Jerusalem, the food ran out, the water ran short. The alliances with Egypt collapsed exactly as Jeremiah had said they would. Month after month the city held, not because it was strong, because the people inside still believed something would save them, a prophet, a miracle, an Egyptian army, God himself arriving at the last moment the way he had in the days of Hezekiah. But this time was different. This time the glory had already left. The protection had already lifted. The coals had already fallen in July of 586 BC. The walls were breached. Babylonian soldiers poured into the streets of the city of David. Zedekiah tried to flee. He was caught on the plains of Jericho, brought before Nebuchadnezzar at Riblah in the north. His sons were killed before his eyes. Then his eyes were put out. The last thing Zedekiah ever saw was the death of his sons. Jerusalem was burned. The temple, Solomon's temple, 400 years of the presence of God, was set on fire and destroyed. The walls were torn down. The remaining population was carried away. The city of David became rubble and ash and silence. In Babylon, Ezekiel was watching, waiting, the way a watchman waits when he already knows what the smoke on the horizon means. In the 12th year of exile, the 5th month, a survivor arrived from Jerusalem, walked into Tel Aviv, found Ezekiel, and said, "The city has fallen." 3 words, the thing every exile had refused to believe, now undeniable, now real. And that night, the hand of God opened Ezekiel's mouth. The restriction was lifted. The silence was over, finally over. He could speak freely now, not just warnings, not just sign acts. Now, comfort, restoration, the other side of the scroll. The exiles who had called him an entertainer came to him differently now. The riddles had become history. The warnings had come true. Ezekiel had been right about everything, about the abominations, about the glory departing, about the walls meaning nothing without the presence. And now, only now, were they ready to hear what came next, what God intended after the falling, after the ash. The watchman had stood on the wall through the longest night. The city had fallen exactly as the scroll had said it would. But the scroll had 2 sides. The lamentations and mourning were on one side. Something else was waiting on the other. Ezekiel's mouth was open. His people were finally listening. And God was about to show him the strangest vision yet. Not a city being destroyed, a valley full of bones, and a wind coming that could make dead things stand up and breathe again. The hand of God came on Ezekiel again and carried him out and set him down in the middle of a valley, not Jerusalem, not Tel Aviv, a valley, open, flat, and filled, completely filled with bones. God walked him through the valley, back and forth, so he could see every corner of it, every pile, every scattered fragment. The bones were very dry. The text is specific about that, not recently dead, not freshly fallen, ancient, bleached, long dead. An army had died here once, a great army, and no one had buried them. They had lain in the open until there was nothing left. Then God asked Ezekiel a question. "Son of man, can these bones live?" A question with only two possible answers: yes, which would require a miracle beyond anything Ezekiel had ever seen, or no, which would mean this valley was the end. Ezekiel gave neither answer. He said, "Lord God." You know, he threw the question back to the only one who could answer it. That is the wisest thing a prophet can say, not manufactured faith, not fearful doubt, just, "You know, and I do not." God said, "Prophesy to the bones, speak to them, tell the dry bones to hear the word of the Lord." Ezekiel opened his mouth and spoke to bones, to scattered calcium and dust, to the remains of a people long past hoping. He said, "Dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. He is going to put breath in you. You are going to live." And as he spoke, a sound, a rattling, across the whole valley, every bone beginning to move toward its matching bone, bone to bone, joint to joint, the valley floor shifting, assembling, clicking into place with a sound like thunder underground. Then sinew came, covering the bones, binding them together, then flesh, then skin, stretched over a valley full of forms, but they were not alive yet. They had form, they had structure, they had every physical component of a human body, and yet no breath, a valley of perfectly formed bodies lying still, complete but not living, restored but not awake, because the body alone is not enough, has never been enough. From the very beginning, body without breath is just dust arranged, God said. Prophesy to the wind, to the four winds, call the breath to come from every direction and breathe on the slain, north, south, east, west, every direction, every wind, every breath available in the whole created world. Called into that valley, Ezekiel prophesied to the wind, and the breath came into the nostrils, into the lungs, into the still chests of the valley floor, and they stood up, an exceedingly great army. The text uses three words to describe the size of what was standing: exceedingly great army, three layers of scale, because one word was not enough for what had just risen from the valley floor. Then God explained the vision. These bones are the whole house of Israel. This is what my people have said about themselves. Our bones are dried up, our hope is lost, we are cut off completely. That is the national confession of a people in exile. But God said, I will open your graves. I will bring you up from them. I will put my spirit in you and you will live. Not, I will help you recover. Not, I will improve your situation. I will open the graves. I will reverse the death itself. The four winds were not meteorology. They were theology. God calling restoration from every direction at once. From every corner of creation, Ezekiel had been shown the destruction of Jerusalem from every angle. The abominations, the coals, the glory departing, the city burning. Now he was being shown the other side of the scroll, the side beneath the lamentations, the promise underneath the mourning, the same God who sent the storm to the canal, who scattered the hair, who took the desire of Ezekiel's eyes. That same God was standing in a valley of bones. Watch what I do with dead things when I decide they should live. Ezekiel stood in the valley and watched the army rise, and for the first time since Jerusalem fell, something lifted in his chest, not because the exile was over, not because the city had been rebuilt, just because he had seen God practice resurrection, and a God who can raise a valley of dry bones, can raise anything, any city, any people, any collapsed and scattered hope. The bones had heard the word. The wind had come from four directions. The army was standing, breathing, alive, waiting for orders. Ezekiel came back from the valley changed. The scroll had two sides. He had now read both of them and understood. 25 years into exile, 14 years after Jerusalem fell, and the hand of God came on Ezekiel one more time. The Spirit carried him again, back toward Israel, set him on a very high mountain, and he looked south, below him. The outline of a city, spread across the landscape like a building already present in a different dimension. Not the ruins of Jerusalem, not a rebuilding of what Babylon burned. Something new, something that had never existed before. And standing at the gate of this structure, a man whose appearance was like bronze, gleaming, radiant, inhuman, in his hand a linen cord for measuring long distances, and a measuring reed, a rod, 6 cubits long, the bronze man said to Ezekiel. Son of man, look with your eyes, hear with your ears, set your heart on everything I show you, because you have been brought here to be shown this, and everything you see, you will declare to the house of Israel. Then the measuring began, gate by gate, wall by wall, room by room, court by court. The bronze man measured everything, every threshold, every alcove, every pillar, every post, every step, every dimension, recorded with the precision of divine architecture. The outer wall, the outer court, the inner court, the vestibule, the nave, the inner sanctuary, all measured, all recorded. Ezekiel followed the bronze man through the entire structure. 43 chapters of his book filled with these measurements. Most readers skip these chapters. They are the least read section of one of the least read books in all of Scripture. But Ezekiel did not skip them. He recorded every cubit, every threshold, every chamber, because God told him to, because the measurements were not just architecture, they were promise. Every cubit was a statement. This will be built, not might be, not could be. The precision of the measurements declared the certainty of the intention behind them. When God measures something, He is not planning. He is announcing. The measuring reed was a declaration, not a blueprint. The temple Ezekiel saw was larger than Solomon's temple, more ordered, more symmetrical, more complete in every dimension. Solomon's temple had been the copy, the shadow. This temple was the thing the shadow had been pointing toward all along. There were chambers for the priests, kitchens for the offerings, rooms for the singers, spaces for every aspect of worship, and the orientation was specific. The gate facing east, the inner sanctuary aligned, everything positioned toward a single purpose. Waiting, the whole structure oriented and waiting. For the one thing that would make it more than magnificent stone and cedar, the glory, the presence, the amber fire and the rainbow and the sapphire throne. The thing that had departed from Solomon's temple. The measurements were the body. The breath had not yet come. The structure was complete, but not yet filled, not yet alive. Ezekiel walked through every room of a temple that did not yet exist, measured by a man who was not quite human, and he recorded it all, cubit by cubit, the way a priest records the things that matter, carefully, completely, without omission. The bronze man with the measuring reed finished his work. Every dimension noted, every proportion established, every space defined. The new temple stood measured and waiting on the high mountain, empty, perfect, ready for what only God could bring back into it. And Ezekiel, the priest who had never served at any altar, had now walked through the floor plan of the final one. He had measured what he would never build with his hands and recorded what his eyes alone among all living men had seen. The temple was measured, every cubit recorded, every gate positioned, every chamber waiting in its precise and ordered place. Then Ezekiel heard it. Before he saw anything, the sound came first. It always came first with this presence, the roar of mighty waters, the voice of the Almighty, the sound of an army on the move, coming from the east. The same sound he had heard 25 years earlier on the bank of the Chebar Canal, on an ordinary morning in exile. He had been 30 years old then. A priest with no temple, standing beside a foreign canal watching the north sky break open. Now he was 55. A prophet with no city, standing on a high mountain watching the eastern horizon begin to change. The sound grew, the way it had grown above the canal, building from a distant roar into something that filled the whole sky. He ran to the east gate, the gate that faced the direction the glory had departed all those years ago, and he looked out, and it was coming back, the glory of the God of Israel, approaching from the east, the exact direction it had left. The vision was like the vision by the River Chebar, the same fire, the same brightness, the same creatures, the same wheels, everything he had first seen at 30. Returning now at 55, the same presence, the same overwhelming reality, unchanged. God does not diminish between appearances. The glory that left Jerusalem was the same glory now crossing the eastern horizon, not weakened by the years of exile, not reduced by the destruction of the temple it had once filled. Exactly the same. Ezekiel fell on his face. The same response as the first time beside the canal. 25 years had not changed that reflex. Some things do not become ordinary, no matter how many times you have encountered them. The glory of God is one of those things. It does not become familiar. It does not become comfortable. Every time, it puts you on the ground. Every time, always. The Spirit lifted him, set him on his feet, brought him to the inner court of the new temple. And then, the glory entered. It came through the east gate, the gate the bronze man had measured, the gate that had been positioned and waiting for this moment, and the glory filled the temple, the way water fills a vessel completely, from threshold to threshold, from floor to ceiling, full, not partially, not gradually building toward fullness, full, the presence of God occupying every measured space at once. This is what the measurements had been for. The precise dimensions, the exact proportions, the careful recording of every cubit, a container built to the exact specifications of the one who would fill it, every room sized for the glory, every threshold ready, not to contain God. Nothing in creation contains God, but to be the chosen place where God dwells among his people again. The glory that had left through the east gate of Solomon's temple entered through the east gate of this new one. Same direction, same presence, same God, but now returning, now coming home, now choosing to dwell again, this time forever. God spoke from inside the temple, from inside his own glory, the voice Ezekiel had first heard above the crystal expanse. He said, "Son of man, this is the place of my throne. This is the place of the soles of my feet, where I will dwell among the people of Israel. Forever, no longer will my holy name be defiled by them or by their kings." Forever, that word, forever, landed in Ezekiel's chest the way the scroll had landed in his stomach decades before. Heavy, real, final, not another temporary arrangement that Israel's unfaithfulness would eventually unravel, not another covenant waiting to be broken. Forever, the final dwelling, the permanent return, the thing every exile had hoped for in their most honest, unguarded moments. God said, "Describe this temple to the house of Israel. Let them measure the pattern. Let them be ashamed of their iniquities. Show them the design, every entrance, every exit, every law, every form. Write it in their sight so they may keep it all." The measuring was not just for Ezekiel's private record. It was for the people's hope. Here is what is coming. Here is what I am building. Ezekiel stood inside a temple filled with glory and felt something settle in him that had been unsettled since the road out of Jerusalem. Not relief exactly, not simple hope. Something older and deeper and more permanent than either of those familiar feelings. The sense that the story was not over, that the scroll had indeed been written on both sides, that the mourning had an end. The priest, who had never served at any altar, was standing inside the most glorious temple ever measured, full of the presence of God, and the God who had sent the storm to the canal had brought everything all the way round to this, to return, to fullness, to home. The glory was in the temple, the presence had come back from the east, the forever had begun, and there was still one thing left, something moving beneath the threshold of the temple. Something small and quiet, beginning in the darkness under the foundation stones. Something alive, something that had not been there when the bronze man finished his measurements. Something new, something growing. The bronze man was still with him, still holding the measuring reed, but this time, he was not measuring walls. He was measuring water, a trickle of water coming from under the threshold of the temple, from beneath the east-facing door, not from a spring outside, not from a canal dug by engineers the way the Chebar had been dug, from under the temple itself, from beneath the place where the glory had just settled. from the foundation stones of the house where God had chosen to dwell. The water was coming from inside the presence, flowing out from under the threshold, moving east toward the desert, toward the sea. The bronze man led Ezekiel east along the bank of this water, 1,000 cubits. Then he stopped and said, "Step in." Ezekiel stepped into the water. It was ankle deep, 1,000 cubits from the temple, and the water reached his ankles. They walked another 1,000 cubits. The bronze man measured. Ezekiel stepped in again, still moving, still growing, another 1,000 cubits. The bronze man measured. Ezekiel stepped in. The water was at his waist now, and still rising. One more 1,000 cubits, the bronze man measured, and Ezekiel stepped toward the water and could not cross it, not ankle deep anymore, not knee deep, not waist deep, a river deep enough to swim in, impossible to wade across, a river that no one had dug, that no rain had fed, that had begun as a trickle under a threshold and become uncrossable water. The bronze man said, "Son of man, have you seen this?" Then he brought Ezekiel back to the bank of the river, and as they walked back, Ezekiel saw what the river had done to the land on either side of its banks as it passed. Trees everywhere, on both sides of the river, a great many trees where there had been desert and salt flats. Trees, living trees, not the stunted scrub of the Judean wilderness, full trees, tall trees, trees that had no business growing in that soil, the bronze man said. This water flows toward the eastern region, down into the Araba, into the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea, the saltiest body of water on earth. The place where nothing lives, where nothing has ever lived within human memory. When this river reaches it, the water will become fresh. The salt water will be healed. The Dead Sea will become living water. Every living creature that swarms will live wherever the river goes, because the water from the temple makes everything alive that it touches. Fishermen will stand on the shores of what was the Dead Sea, spreading their nets from En-Gedi to En-Eglaim, catching fish of every kind, the same shore where nothing had ever lived, the same water where nothing had ever swum, full of fish, full of nets, full of life, but the swamps and marshes along the edge. Those will not be healed. They will be left for salt, a boundary to the restoration, even in the fullness of the river. A limit, even in the healing, a distinction between what the water touches and what it does not. On both banks of the river, the trees, fruit trees, every kind, their leaves will not wither, their fruit will not fail. Every month they will bear fruit, because the water flowing past them comes from the sanctuary, from under the threshold of God's house, and their fruit, for food, and their leaves. For healing, the trees fed by the river of God produce healing in their leaves. Ezekiel stood on the bank and tried to hold what he was seeing inside the categories his priestly mind had been trained with. He had seen the storm from the north, the creatures with four faces, the wheels within wheels, the throne above the crystal expanse. He had seen the glory leave Jerusalem. He had watched the valley of bones rise. He had walked through the measured temple room by room, and now, a river, starting as a trickle under a door, growing without any natural source, healing everything it touched as it went. This was the last object, the final vision, the thing the whole book had been building toward since the heavens opened above the canal. Not a weapon, not a throne, not a creature of fire and eyes. A river, quiet, persistent, unstoppable, getting deeper as it moved. The river did not announce itself. It did not roar like the wings of the cherubim or crash like the voice of the Almighty. It simply flowed from under the threshold, east, into the desert, into the dead places, making them alive without asking permission. This is what the presence of God produces when it settles permanently among His people. Not just glory, not just fire, life, ordinary, unglamorous, persistent life. Trees bearing fruit every month, fish in the dead water, nets spread on healed shores. The same God who had sent the storm to the canal, who had driven out the money changers from the temple courts in His time, was now sending a river from under His own threshold into the deadest place on earth, and the dead place was becoming a fishery. Ezekiel had started this journey as a priest with no temple. trained for a calling that exile had seemed to make impossible. He was ending it standing beside a river that came from under the threshold of the final temple, with healing in every leaf. The scroll he had eaten contained lamentations on one side, but the river pouring from the sanctuary told him what was on the other, not mourning, not woe, life. Everywhere the river flows. Life. That was the last word of the vision, the final object, the final sign. The water was rising, the trees were bearing fruit in every season, and somewhere in the Dead Sea below, the first fish were waking up.